Big news. All Microsoft 365 users can now use Copilot in Excel to generate Python code for data analysis, all with a few clicks, no coding experience needed. Sounds like a dream, right? In some cases, yes, but in others, you should be skeptical. In this video, I'll be chatting with Excel expert Enrique Ruiz about his thoughts on this latest feature update as he walks through a demo of Copilot in Excel with Python. All right, Enrique, you taught a Copilot tutorial yesterday, and you said the students were surprised to see how easily you could generate Python code in Excel with no technical experience. Can you share a bit more about that?
Yes. So the full context is from Maven Analytics. I teach AI-driven Excel with Microsoft Copilot course on O'Reilly. So it's a live course. It's 90 minutes, and it's basically just an overview of the Copilot features for Microsoft Excel. Now, yesterday was the second time that I ever delivered it. The first was December last year. And then the basic features for Copilot included adding new formula columns using Excel's formula language. It involved sorting, filtering, and highlighting data using conditional formatting rules. And it involved analyzing data, and it did so using pivot tables, pivot charts, and sometimes formulas. Now, for this iteration, as I kind of looked through my slides to practice and kind of went through my demo exercise, I realized that now my version, and this will be a theme, we're talking about versions and how things have flown down to the consumers, now included the ability to do advanced analysis with Python and Excel. Now, I did previously have access to Python and Excel, and as now a Python user, thanks to your courses, I had played around with it, and there were a lot of things that I was very excited for. But now with this, I would just click a button, and I'll show you in a second, and it would start just writing all this Python code and performing all these analysis based on just like suggested prompts. So I wasn't even critically thinking about what I wanted yet. And it just started doing things and writing Python code and inserting charts or images, as you'll see. And I kind of had to like take a beat because it got overwhelming. And I had to think about, all right, how do I write my prompts and how do I structure my sessions so that I'm showing off the best of what this now Copilot with Python in Excel has to offer to my students. And when I start my course, I'll always ask, please share in the chat your level of expertise, right? From 1 to 10. I'd say the average was about 5, ranging mostly between like 4s and 7s, right? Like, so you'll see like 1, 8, 1, 1, but mostly, right around the middle. And honestly, most of the time people like overestimate their knowledge. I would say it's like basic to sometimes intermediate Excel users were there. And what ended up happening, and I didn't expect, was as I started demoing those Python features, and again, this is all very structured on my end, like I knew exactly what to ask to get what I wanted to for the purpose of the presentation. People just started asking, like, oh, does this mean like, should I be learning Python then to take advantage of everything that Excel, like to take advantage of all of Excel's limitations? Like, should I be learning Python? And that really surprised me because my answer is no. Like it kind of caught me off guard at the minute, but I don't think like because now Python is a thing in Excel and Copilot makes it so easy to just start generating Python code without even knowing what's happening, that to think like, oh, like that's what my next step should be. And it shouldn't. Like I'd argue most data analysts never need to learn Python in their entire lives, right? Maybe you disagree, especially the ones that are just like using Excel for their day-to-day tasks, like light analyses, and just maybe they're in data adjacent roles, which is my best guess for these folks. And they just need to learn to get a little bit more out of their data and how to get there. And I think the leap now with Python is it felt like too much. And the things that were getting left behind in the middle were the most critical pieces. So I got a little bit freaked out, to be honest.
See, that's really surprising to me because like ChatGPT has been around for the past year. And for me, when I first used ChatGPT, I was really surprised by that. And this feels like a very similar idea, but just in Excel. So why is this such a big jump from just ChatGPT?
It's a good question. I think it's hard to tell what the differences are. Like, and I was thinking about this earlier, and I mean, Excel is probably the most used like data analytics tool on the planet still. I think ChatGPT has likely surpassed it in terms of maybe number of daily users, but they're not. All those daily users aren't really using it for these sorts of tasks, right? They're asking it, for recipes based on what they have in their fridge, for an itinerary for their next vacation. Sometimes, yes, they'll ask it, but I think it's the seasoned coders, for example, that just will ask ChatGPT for things to like, make their processes more efficient. But it's not someone that like has this data set from scratch and just like there's just no barrier of entry. Like before, you'd have to upload your file, right? Which like isn't quite recent. Actually, in the past, you'd have to like describe your data set. You have to do that, ask for what you want, and then you'll kind of like the results will live there. Like it'll give you some insights, and you'll say, all right, but it's not like if you wanted it to make the changes to your file, output it. Like it wasn't. I never really had very much success doing that, so it's not like it was impacting like your document in any way, or it was just like, all right, like it analyzed it like this, fair enough. If you wanted to like generate Python code that you could then work with based on the data set, you would at least have to be comfortable with like opening up a Jupyter notebook or something to take advantage of like copy it, paste it somewhere else, be able to run, like you'd have to have Python installed on your computer, right? Like all those things are now gone. Like the Anaconda integration with Excel makes it so that you have all these libraries pre-installed. You have the Python environment directly in Excel. And now Copilot will write the code for you. So like it's just for anyone, like anyone that has Excel 365 at least now has the ability to have Copilot look at the data set that they have in their document and write Python code based off of it doesn't even have to be based off of a prompt because it will suggest prompts for you, which is just insane. Like in 2 clicks, I don't know, where you can have Python forecasting data, or maybe you shouldn't even be forecasting at all, but it's such a nice word that I mean, why wouldn't I want to forecast?
I know at this point,
I
I
don't know.
want to
It's
see what
scary.
this looks like. So can you give us a demo of it?
Let me share my screen. And the other thing I'll say, and why it's so relevant right now, is that the general release for Python and Excel was like September last year. So that meant that anyone on 365 now had access to Python and Excel. Were they using it? Probably not. They don't know Python, right? So no harm, no foul. Maybe they weren't getting the full benefits, but you also can't go like you're not, you know, doing anything wrong with it either. Not that it's like life or death or anything, but still. And Copilot was also a part of it. But again, it had those basic features that I'm talking about, right? And you had to pay for Copilot Pro. So that was the barrier there, right? Yes, you had Python in your base 365, but you weren't using it. And you could get Copilot, but you had to pay for it. Probably weren't. End of story. Now, like a month ago, I think it was January 16th, Microsoft mentioned that Copilot is now a part of 365. So anyone that has 365, which in the past I would always recommend to anyone that's using Excel on a daily basis, just get 365, right? You'll get the latest updates, like no brainer. But what that means is like anyone that opens up an Excel workbook can now, in 2 clicks, write a linear regression model with with Python that they can't understand, with features that they don't really know that are going into the model, or they like, you know what I mean? So it's just, I guess it's good as time as I need to share my screen. So let me do that. All right, so I've got an Excel document open here. You'll notice that it's autosave this on, so everything has to be on saved to OneDrive or SharePoint, which is its own separate conversation to begin with. And you can just go to Home, Copilot. So we got these initial prompts, right? Create a box plot using Python. Create a total row. Fair enough. I think that's probably going to be using Excel. How do I think that's pretty cool too. Split column. So these are all great, but the first one we get is to create a box plot. And I can create a box plot right now of salary by myself using Excel, right? Again, just a few clicks away. Like, yeah, all right, so we start to learn some information. There's some outliers here. It looks like most salaries go from about 50K to 100K, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can edit this, like it's familiar. It's this chart object in Excel. But the instinct for Copilot isn't to go there. It's to create it using Python, right? So I click on it. Wait for that to take a look. By the way, this is all using like an HR data set. So you'll see we have employees, their salaries, etc., which I like using for examples because it's the sort of person that will use like Excel for like very light analyses or just keeping track of their data. They have some decisions to make, but it's not like they are data analysts, right? They don't have all the technical skills.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd think, oh, it's great that Copilot like removes the need for you to learn that, but the implications of learning things and what you pick up along the way is what gets lost. And to me, it would be like some of the most important stuff, right? That critical thinking, and just the feel that you get for the data. So let's ask it for to start the analysis again. All right, it's creating a data frame.
So that's the Python code up there.
Yeah, the first one is it's like a mix of this new XL function is what enables it. You'll see there's a Python environment as well in the formula bar, which is another new thing. And it's just reading it. So we've got this preview of the data frame object that was created right here. And now, yeah, we've got this box plot for salary distribution by department.
Wow.
Honestly, not bad. To be fair, not bad at all. You can do this again with a stock Excel chart. some of my concerns, like this is now, it's an image, right? So if we go into the Python code, which you'll be familiar with, most people won't, you'll see it's a Seaborn box plot, right? It's
Hmm.
using department, salary, and the data frame here, and then it's just adding different elements. But what you get at the end, oh, there we go, it's got to recalculate all the Python. You get an image, which is a lot, like as an output, like we've talked about this in the past, right? We did a whole clustering with Python and Excel, and I think the title was Best of Both Worlds.
Yeah.
Why? Because you get the benefit of being able to use some of the Python libraries, methods, functions, like the clustering algorithms, which you don't normally get in Excel, but the things like the data visualization, like the elements that are a lot harder to code than to like drag and drop do, which is Excel is great for. Well, now you can just do that stuff in Excel, right? It's simple. Now you just select, we're doing department, like salary as well. And again, just insert box and whisker plot, right? Not sure why it's adding it the series twice, but just get rid of this one. And we have the same exact information now in an Excel object that anyone, you can customize the chart title, you can copy and paste this into a PowerPoint, play around with the colors. If you want to ask Copilot to do any of that stuff, it won't be able to do it directly here. So then it's going to write the whole Python code again. It's going to make those edits, and it's just going to be this whole back and forth of like getting it to write the Python code you want to format it, even just for the sizing aspect, right?
Yeah.
So why is this necessary is my
I
question.
think that is my biggest surprise when I saw this because when I first heard, okay, they're going to be able to write Python code in Excel, I thought it was only for the things that you could only do in Python. But data visualization is better done in Excel, and that's coming from a Python coder. So, yeah, this one is really strange to me that it would come out as an image, even though it's better for the user experience if it was like an Excel visualization. So yeah, I find this fascinating, and I understand your surprise now that everything is done in Python when it doesn't have to be in this case.
Yeah, and I think it just adds this layer, not uncertainty, but it just makes it kind of like muddies the Excel product for me because the thing I like most about teaching that Copilot course is that I think it's like if you don't know where to click, it's a natural language interface for Excel, right? So if there's something that you want but you don't know the exact function, or you maybe didn't even know that Excel had that feature, then like for the first few times, leveraging Copilot to get you there is fair enough. But what I like to highlight is that honestly, a lot of this stuff is much easier than you think to do yourself in Excel. And I try to, show just like we did here, right? But because now people can just prompt away into infinity, like I think they're just stop learning the fundamentals now more than ever because you know more than anyone. You can do anything in Python. Should
Yeah.
you? And should you with Python and Excel? I don't think my answer right now is no, right? So
Yeah.
that's my concern as an educator, I think.
I mean, it's true. Like it you have that nice shiny icon up there. It's so tempting to just click on it and just ask away, but yeah, this is what we always talk about in thinking as an analyst, which is yes, you have these tools that are doing a lot of the work for you, but you really need to know how to think critically. And yeah, this is one of those examples. I am curious though, if it's able to do more advanced analysis that you can't replicate in Excel alone. So instead of like a
Give it a shot.
visualization, can it do any machine learning?
Let's say something like cluster the employees. See what we get. The best part about this too, like just say, and I know I'm only asking it right now because you asked me to do like a machine learning prompt, but I feel like it's because machine learning is such a hot topic. Like you might like the clustering word, and I love you mentioned thinking like an analyst. The thinking like a data science piece of all your data science courses and crisp rules. It always starts with like, do you even need machine learning to begin with? Like, think
Yep.
about the situation first. That will like then let you know which algorithm to use, if any. But here it's just like, yeah, let's go, right? Like some of the suggested prompts, let's see if I can get it, and then we can kind of focus on the clustering. Will just be like, yeah, let's forecast, yeah, perform forecasting. Imagine just launching Copilot. Maybe you do have time series data. You just go, all right, yeah, let's go, let's forecast, right? Like,
I mean, when you do that from your experience, like playing around with it for the past few days, is it accurate? Like what do the results look like?
we'll see what we get, and maybe we focus on the clustering first, and then we'll use this
Okay.
button.
Yeah, I'm
I
so
will say,
curious.
yeah, let's take it one step at a time. Let me go down to the
Okay.
clustering. So let's see what we got. All right, so it looks like we got this preview, and it looks like it already added the cluster labels to our original data frame of employees. So let's
That's pretty
see,
impressive. So I'm curious
clustered.
what fields it ended up clustering on, because when I teach clustering, I was like, pick your fields first and then see the results. So does it tell you that?
It looks like it does. So to cluster the employees, it's necessary to select relevant features. That's all fair enough. K-means is suitable. All right. And it's going to be using tenure, salary, and performance score. Not bad.
Wow, yeah.
Um,
I
and
mean,
then,
those
yeah.
all make
So
sense. They're the numeric fields.
I wonder where they, oh, I think they might be not yet. So let's take a look at the Python behind the scenes. And yeah, I mean, it's grabbing the features,
It's
scaling them.
scaling everything, which is what it's
Yeah.
supposed to do. But like
Three
this, if
clusters.
I'm teaching a clustering course, this would this is something I would spend a half hour explaining instead of just putting it here. And I always tell people like, don't fall into the danger zone. Don't just know how to use the tool and know like what clustering is. Like you actually have to know the math behind it. So I absolutely agree with you. Like this is really cool for someone like me who does a lot of Python and does a lot of machine learning. Like this is so cool that we can do this in Excel now. But on the other end of that, if you don't know this, it is kind of dangerous because what if you don't interpret the results correctly? Like in this case, we see n clusters is equal to 3, but then here we just see like 2 clusters, zeros and ones, and that might be confusing to some people.
Yeah, maybe there's
I don't
very
know.
few people in cluster two. And again, I mean, maybe
Oh,
the
this is
next
just a
step is
preview. I see
Copilot.
that. This is just a preview, so it's
Yeah,
gonna go. Yeah.
I think it's part of what. So it's using array preview. We
Yeah.
could, I think, grab the data frame and like split the whole thing out. But again, how do I even go from here to all right, give me the whole thing? And what's scary is, like, if I knew nothing else about clustering and someone asked me to cluster the employees, here, like, we have the labels now. Like, we're done, right? What does each
Yeah.
cluster mean? Copilot certainly hasn't told me yet. Like, there's just so much nuance that gets lost because, to your point, like, this is a direct, like, one step shortcut into the danger zone, right? Like, because
Yeah.
now anyone can cluster. Like, at least in the past, I think it's a thing. Like don't just copy and paste code and apply it to your own data. Like that's not how this works, right? There's so much like almost art, right, or finesse to this science. And at least in the past, you had to copy the code from somewhere. Like you had to write like some
You have
of
to
this
struggle.
yourself. Think about the features, yeah. Like, but there's so much learning in that struggle, and now there is zero struggle. So you learn nothing, but you can achieve anything. And there's no way of like the whole thing about turning data into insights is like what you learn along the way, not just like here's an end result based on a method that I suggested in the first bubble here. Like that's not the point.
Yeah,
And
and
you
that's
made a
just
great
sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was just gonna say you made a great point in that like maybe for you and I this is very exciting because like yeah, like all right, like I can already start to maybe think of ways that I can start using Python and Excel that would make it easier than if I just had to rely on a Jupyter notebook, right? Or vice versa. But it was like this isn't for you and I because we're not going to be using Copilot for it, right? But the Copilot piece is what like brings it back to just like the Excel intermediate beginner users, and the excitement is still there because oh look clustering, right? But all the real benefits from it are lost, and like there's no easy way to then like yeah, like why would then people learn the foundations, right? And that's the most
Yeah.
important piece of all of this stuff, you know?
Yeah. I just think of whenever I'm talking about some data analysis, before getting into the algorithms, I always say, make sure you really get a good feel for your data and like understand the nuances so you know what insights to extract from that. And I think this is the part we're losing out on is the step of getting a good feel for your data, which is a lot of the fun in data analysis. And while I say that, I also think, well, isn't it good to bring like complex algorithms to everyone out there? Like I think of like planning for a trip, for example. I'm planning a trip for a few months from now, and I was able to quickly get information about the cities I wanted to visit. Like, that should be available for everyone, right? But I guess in
Yeah.
this case, the the distinction is that if you don't know all the nuances, then again, you fall in that danger zone and you can give bad recommendations and you can be doing something really fancy that is actually like not a good suggestion.
Yeah, and like if we, like there's to your analogy about like planning a trip, for example. Like, I think it's great. There's a lot more understanding that you already have on the topic of just like traveling, even if you've never traveled before, than you do of machine learning if you've never seen an algorithm like a machine learning
Yeah.
algorithm to begin with. And say you do that, and oh, the LLM forgets the important step of you need a visa because you're just asking for an itinerary. Buy all your stuff, get on the flight, or maybe you can't like you like
Yeah.
whoop, like that critical piece of like expertise. Granted, maybe it doesn't get lost in the, but you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah,
and
that's a
that was the
great
most like
example.
that collapsed everything that you had already you know built or whatever we want to call it because of a fundamental like piece that was missing that ties it all together. So I don't know. It's why it concerns me, right? Like anyone that launches Excel now can do all this stuff, which is great, but not everyone. It's silly to say that they're not ready to use it because it's not like we're not performing surgery, right?
Yeah, it's
But
true.
I just think like if the purpose of all this is to like enable, yeah, like your average Joe that uses Excel to like gain more insights, it's in the long run, I don't think this is better for them. I don't know. It's like the teaching a man how to fish. Like this is just like flooding them with all the fish in the ocean, and like now that it like, what was I even looking for to begin with, right? Like I
Yeah.
think it just misses the point. I don't know.
I mean, that's totally valid. And you've been teaching Copilot for a while now. So I feel like this new feature for it to affect you so much, to me, like that means something because
Yeah.
it just feels like such a big shift for you. So I guess for people out there who are learning Excel right now or are starting to learn Excel, what should they be focusing on? It sounds like not Python. Is there anything else you would recommend?
So great question. You will have access to Copilot. Don't just like blindly go in there. Like first of all, like and we'd say this even before AI, right? Like don't
Yeah.
just dive into the data, right? Even if you have the technical skills for it, like think about what your objective is, right? Now, the new step now is like try to solve it yourself. And granted, there's some like technical limitations to that Copilot solves in overabundance, right? Which is I think the key part here. But just like how would I recommend people learn Excel, which is what I'd recommend to start with for anyone that's just getting into data to begin with. Just your basic formulas and functions to be able to extract new information and create new columns from your data. Um, Learn pivot tables for very basic data analysis and like summarizing your data, and then just basic charts and graphs to be able to communicate the insights that you find through that exploration with pivot tables. Honestly, like you can learn that stuff in a short amount of time with like I'm not going to say minimum effort, but it's something that I firmly believe anyone to the point where like it will get you most of what you ever need is just like a standard person that uses spreadsheets for their everyday finances or like a data adjacent role. Like that's likely all you need. A lot of this is overkill and it's so tempting and it's so easy to do the wrong things with the right intentions that I do think like try to instead rely on Copilot like we have with Google in the past, right? Just like, all right, there's this roadblock that the expertise I currently have has like it's still in my way. Like how do I get around it versus just obliterate everything in my path and now like we missed the point, right? I don't know. I feel I'm getting overly apocalyptic about it. But it, again, as an educator, like I feel like it's more harmful than it is like helping people
No, I
do what
get
they
that.
need with
I
data.
the analogy I think about is like my kindergartner who's learning how to do basic math, and if we just handed her a calculator and we're like, "Go, just do stuff," but then she doesn't understand those foundational concepts. And I think to be a good or a great analyst, you really, like you said, like need those foundational concepts. And this is a nice tool every now and then. Like maybe you can use Copilot to just look something up, but then actually try to do it yourself.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just me. Like I was always when I was taking like tests in school, I was always a double checker, right? And even now when I teach, like I'll be teaching my Copilot course. I'll say, all right, we're going to create these formulas. Let's double check the outputs as you should with like that's been the
Yeah.
whole spiel with AI from the beginning. Like know that it can make mistake confidently, but just make sure you verify its results. Well, in the everything else I teach with Copilot, like it's very easy to say, all right, well, we were expecting this, right? Based on what we asked. It looks like it did it correct. Like A plus Copilot. Thank you. Right? Now it's writing clustering algorithms in an Excel cell that I even had to know where to click to like be able to expand the formula bar to like read the code. Like now there's no double checking like at all. And granted, part of machine learning is that, right? Like knowing the math so that you know how to interpret the results based on like maybe right now let's look at the cluster center. So let's look at the number of employees per cluster and learn to interpret that. That's for that's for educated data scientists, right? Not for the person that just clicked Copilot, cluster, and result. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So like, yeah, I struggle with expressing, and maybe it's not concern, but like my just the asterisk of it all, I guess.
I think that's so important to share though, because I think when something like this comes out, everyone's so excited about it and you're like, oh, this is how I should do my work now. But I think what you've added here is yes, but just with a grain of salt. Like double
Yeah,
check your work, remember the fundamentals. That's what being a great analyst is all about.
absolutely.
Okay. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. I mean, I'll continue to, explore. It is exciting. Like I'm not to be a downer here and say like, oh, like it's progress, right? And I think there's benefit in reducing the technical, like the friction to gaining technical skills, but to completely remove it and make it so easily accessible, it just lends itself to misuse, is all, I guess. Yeah. So I'll continue to learn and I'll try to find ways and like the ways in which Copilot is most helpful. And I'll try to share those with people. And I'll do the same for just Python and Excel in general, because I think there's a lot of benefits that we aren't getting with Copilot and Python together, but you can get with just Python and Excel if you start learning some of the Python, right? Which is again the foundations. Like, what's the point? So yeah.
Yeah, I'm really curious where this goes because, like, coming from a coding background, I do think a lot of coding has been simplified with LLMs, and I do think there's a future in that. But this just feels like maybe a step in a slightly, like, I don't want to say the wrong direction, but like an off direction, and we just need to pull it back to where it needs to be. But it is still a step in that direction of just computers are going to help us code better and better going forward. But the interpretation is maybe not there yet. Um,
Yeah.
but anyways, I just wanted to say I can't wait to keep hearing your thoughts on this because Enrique, I just feel like you're so uniquely positioned here. You are an expert Excel user, you know how to use Copilot well, you're familiar with Python, and not many people fall into that, like is are able to do all three of those
Yeah.
things. And so it just I really like hearing your thoughts on this. So
I
thanks again for
appreciate it.
this conversation. And to everyone else out there, again, I'm Alice from Maven Analytics. Thank you so much for watching. Please comment below with your thoughts and questions for Enrique. He'll respond to your comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more data content just like this. See you all in the next one.